Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Da-mi in Seoul. After agreeing to build up cooperation in essential fields, including key minerals, leaders from South Korean and African nations continue to explore further collaboration. Now in the field of economy, a business summit is well underway here in Seoul. South Korea's economy grew at 1.3% in the first 3 months of 2024, matching an estimate given in April. Exports and construction investment led the growth. U.S. President Joe Biden says the North's security challenge is equally as threatening as it was before, when asked if North Korea is getting more provocative, referring to whether North Korea issues were worse during the Trump administration. The second and last day of the Korea-Africa Summit today will stretch out to a grand-scale economic event. Major government officials and business leaders from the two sides have gathered for a business summit. Let's turn to our Choi Min-jung for details. Min-jung.
Right, Dami, it's day 2 of the Korea-Africa Summit, and as you said, leaders and delegations from South Korea and Africa are currently participating in the business summit hosted by South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. President Yoon delivered a keynote speech at the opening ceremony and stressed the need to boost trade and investment between Korea and Africa. He also called on the need to establish a partnership for core minerals with key nations. Also addressed was climate change-related collaboration and development cooperation. Around 400 people, including African head of states, major government officials, business leaders, and economic experts, are attending the event to discuss agenda items in line with the key areas of economic cooperation mentioned by Yoon. Among the business leaders are the CEOs of Korea's Hyundai Motor Group and Lotte Group. Now, on the sidelines of the event, there are also the signing of MOUs between major economic organizations in South Korea and Africa, including the establishment of a Korea-Africa Economic Committee.
Right, Min-jung, and besides this significant business summit, we hear there are more side events on Korea-Africa partnerships taking place today as well. Let's talk more about that.
That's right, Dami. There are several side events scheduled throughout the day today. South Korea's Foreign Ministry and the Korea International Cooperation Agency are hosting a Korea-Africa Future Partnership Conference, focusing on development cooperation strategy for empowering future generations. There are also forums on youth startups, infrastructure, as well as agriculture. Now, these events are hosted by Korean government ministries and organizations with delegations from multiple African nations in attendance. This is all I have for now. Back to you, Dami.
All right, Min-jung, thank you for that coverage. Now, moving on. President Yoon Suk-yeol discussed ways to strengthen mineral cooperation and development assistance with leaders of 4 African countries on the sidelines of the summit on Tuesday. In a bilateral meeting with Madagascan leader Andre Rajoelina, Yoon discussed the two countries' cooperation in core minerals and agreed on strengthening Korea's assistance in cultivating high-quality rice. Meeting with Kenyan President William Ruto, Yoon said he hopes to expand cooperation in infrastructure and food security, while agreeing to start talks on signing an economic partnership agreement and complete the construction of a Kenyan Institute of Science. Yoon also reviewed bilateral trade and investment ties with Ghana, with his counterpart requesting Korea play a bigger role in infrastructure projects. The South Korean leader also met with the president of Liberia and discussed economic and democratic growth. On Wednesday, Yoon will hold bilateral meetings with the leaders of Mauritania, Equatorial Guinea, Comoro, Botswana, Eswatini, Central African Republic, and the Seychelles. He will also meet the chairperson of the African Union Commission. And yesterday, on day 1 of the summit, the leaders discussed their vision of shared growth, sustainability, and solidarity, and agreed to expand cooperation in many fields, including key minerals. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
South Korea and African nations have agreed to establish a critical minerals dialogue and increase cooperation on infrastructure, digital technology, and food security. This came in a joint statement following South Korea's first standalone summit with African countries on Tuesday, attended by 48 member states of the African Union. President Yoon and African Union Chair President Mohamed El Ghazouani of Mauritania highlighted the 7 major areas of cooperation under the theme of shared growth, sustainability and solidarity.
한 아프리카 관계의 새로운 장을 열게 된 오늘 회의에서 참석자들은 함께 만드는 미래를 위한 구체적 방안들을 심도 있게 논의했습니다.
We all understand that Korea can offer a lot, especially when it comes to the experience of development, human capital development, and transition to digital economy. In these ways, we have a lot to learn, and we were able to learn the growth potential of Africa.
First, to promote trade and investment, the two sides agreed to pursue an economic partnership agreement and the trade and investment promotion framework to promote more corporate exchanges. Seoul will also aim to expand its official development assistance to Africa to $10 billion by 2030 and provide some $14 billion of financing for Korean companies to tap into the market of some 1.4 billion people. South Korea and Africa also signed MOUs on building infrastructure, including roads, rails and ports, and increasing the digital capacity of African youth through educational and vocational programs. They also penned deals to strengthen cooperation on food security, sustainable farming and health infrastructure. And one key deal they struck was to establish a dialogue channel on critical minerals, which are core components for advanced digital products like semiconductors, South Korea's main export. As of 2022, South Korea has only 36 mineral mines to back the sector, compared to the United States' more than 1,900 and Japan's 134, according to the Federation of Korean Industries. Amid various regional and global challenges to peace and security, the two sides agreed to increase cooperation in counter-terrorism and humanitarian support, as well as their solidarity at the UN Security Council, where South Korea and 3 African countries are serving non-permanent terms. Also, the two sides emphasized the international community's push for the complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. To further develop their cooperation, they agreed to increase bilateral exchanges between governments and businesses, as well as in culture, sports and academia. To ensure continuity of their agreements, South Korea and Africa will hold a foreign ministers meeting in 2 years' time and establish high-level consultative bodies on economic cooperation and agriculture.
Marking a new chapter in Korea-Africa cooperation, the summit creates an intersection between Korea's vision of becoming a global pivotal state, a responsible contributor to world peace and prosperity, and Agenda 2063, Africa's blueprint for sustainable development with the goal of becoming a global powerhouse. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Korea-Africa Summit also focused on increasing trade and seeking new opportunities for South Korean companies. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang met with Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation to take a closer look at the country's economic potential.
Egypt, located in the northeastern corner of Africa, acts as a gateway to 3 major regions: Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Its Suez Canal, which carries about 15% of the global trade volume, is the fastest sea route between Europe and most of Asia. Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation, who visited Seoul to take part in the Korea-Africa Summit, says with the Suez Economic Zone, many companies have set up businesses in Egypt to export to Africa, as well as to benefit from the free trade agreements that Egypt has with other countries. She added that the government looks forward to welcoming Korean companies in fields such as those that can contribute to Egypt meet its climate goals.
South Korea is very well known for the technology, so in the ICT sector, the digital transformation is very important for us. Also, when it comes to technology, water desalination requires a lot of technology, and this is again one of the sectors which is very much in line with the green transition and climate action. Also with respect to the renewable sources of energy, be it wind or solar, is another a very important sector for us.
Samsung Electronics has already had a manufacturing facility in Egypt for more than 10 years now and plans to invest more in the country. Hyundai Rotem, a heavy industry company under the Hyundai Motor Group, won a deal worth more than $600 million in 2022 to supply trains for Cairo's metro lines, in which the minister says has several benefits.
It localizes industrialization, it creates opportunities, it has technology transfer, and it's a very good opportunity for Hyundai to be able to export to the African continent. So it's a very important project for us, and we take it actually as a flagship to think about other ways to also industrialize, to localize other industries within the country.
South Korea and Egypt have had diplomatic relations since 1995 and mark 30 years of diplomatic relations next year.
So in addition to the big companies in Egypt, there are so many other projects which are addressing health, gender, NGOs, etc. So there's a very diverse portfolio that we have with Korea, and I think the 30th anniversary provides a very good opportunity for us to show Koreans and Egyptians how this collaboration and cooperation has been beneficial for both people.
As Egypt plans to build a stronger partnership with South Korea, its state-run airline Egypt Air is also pushing to establish a direct flight between Cairo and Seoul as early as next year. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
And it wasn't just the leaders. Media outlets from several different African countries also showed great interest in the possible outcomes from the two-day summit. Our Park Kwon-woo talked to them.
I'm here on the first day of the historic 2024 Korea-Africa Summit held here in Korea. The event not only drew attention domestically, but also from dozens of media outlets in Africa. Let's get their take on the event.
Us creating a relation in terms of probably exchange, trade, and also in terms of companies, Korean companies setting up in Africa and especially in Eswatini, so that we can benefit in terms of creating jobs and obviously innovation and things like that.
He added the combination of Korea's advanced technology and Eswatini's various mineral resources could help their country develop. A media representative from Malawi also shared the same sentiment, but mentioned potential cooperation in tourism and agriculture.
And another aspect is tourism. Our country is looking forward to have as many tourists as possible coming from different countries, including Korea. Most of our farmers are still using the traditional ways of farming, advanced equipment like tractors, that we know for sure that Korea does have these kind of modern equipment, agricultural equipment. So we are looking forward into those aspects of saying that Korea can help us to invest in these sectors of agriculture.
He added that the Korea-Africa Summit should act as a place where real deals between Korea and African countries actually are promoted. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea's economy is well on its way to a much-expected recovery. Robust exports and improving trade conditions helped the local economy grow by 1.3%. Our economics correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
South Korea's economy expanded in the first quarter to show promising growth on the back of booming exports. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the country's gross domestic product grew 1.3% on quarter between January and March, the same as the advanced estimate given at the end of April. This is the largest on-quarter hike recorded in over 2 years, breaking a sluggish growth trend of below 1%. A downturn in exports led to a contraction of 0.5% in the fourth quarter of 2022, but immediately bounced back up to record 5 straight quarters of growth. Construction investment saw a large rise due to recovery in civil and building construction, jumping by 3.3%. A turnaround in semiconductor exports was also reflected in the latest data, with the IT sector and petroleum goods contributing to the overall rise of 1.8% for exports. Government consumption also expanded by 0.8% on the back of increased expenditure on goods. However, facility investment fell by 2%, while imports also dropped by 0.4% on the back of lower natural gas prices. Meanwhile, the country's gross national income, the total earned by people and businesses, was up 2.4% from the fourth quarter of last year. Net foreign income, calculated by subtracting the income earned by foreigners in the country from the total income earned by Koreans from foreign sources, tallied up to the same as the previous quarter. The agency explained that the GNI overall saw a rise due to improving trade conditions, which reduced trade losses for the country. The topic of when and how the country's GNI per capita will surpass $40,000 has been raised for some time now, after $36,194 was recorded in 2023. A spokesperson from the agency said this.
It's difficult to say exactly when we'll reach that goal because GNI per capita is dependent on so many factors such as real income, GDP deflator, inward and outward remittances, and the foreign exchange market. But should the country's currency stabilize, we predict that it should be possible within a few years.
As of 2023, the country ranked 6th in the world in terms of GNI per capita, between Italy and Taiwan. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The 22nd National Assembly will hold its first plenary session on Wednesday, with a vote on the Speaker and Deputy Speaker set to take place. Five-term lawmaker Woo Won-sik of the main opposition Democratic Party is likely to become the Speaker. Meanwhile, rival parties on Wednesday morning failed to reach an agreement on the allocation of standing committee chairman seats. They've decided to hold additional talks by Friday. South Korea has officially scrapped the entirety of the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement. Seoul's military held the North Korean regime and its repeated provocations responsible for the suspension. Our North Korean Affairs correspondent Kim Jung-sil reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has signed the motion that was passed by the cabinet meeting on Tuesday morning to suspend all clauses of the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement.
The government has decided to suspend all effectiveness of the September 19th military agreement until mutual trust between the two Koreas is restored, effective Tuesday, June 4th, as of 3 p.m., after the decision of the Cabinet and the President's approval.
The 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement was aimed at diffusing military tensions and preventing accidental military conflict at the border. But military officials, including South Korea's defense minister, have argued that the agreement compromises South Korean military readiness.
Since signing the agreement, North Korea has deliberately and repeatedly conducted violations and provocations, including firing artillery shells off the coast, firing missiles beyond the NLL, firing at guard posts, and infiltrating with small unmanned aerial vehicles.
Back in November, North Korea declared a virtual termination of the September 19 military agreement. This came after Seoul partially suspended a clause on aerial reconnaissance following North Korea's launch of a military spy satellite the night before.
Despite North Korea's repeated violations and provocations, our military has continued to abide by the agreement. However, since failing to launch the military reconnaissance satellite back on May 27th, the North has launched missiles, sent large-scale balloons carrying waste, and jammed GPS systems, gravely threatening the safety of our people and causing property damage.
The deputy minister added that the North Korean regime is solely responsible for the turn of events and warned of a firm response should the North engage in further provocations. With the suspension in effect, the deputy minister hinted of the possible resumption of military drills near the military demarcation line and the Northwest Islands. Such drills had been restricted by the agreement. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States and Japan on Tuesday strongly condemned North Korea at a regular board meeting of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In a joint statement issued by the three countries, the three sides expressed serious concerns about the ongoing launch of ballistic missiles, including military reconnaissance satellites, adding that the three countries are cautious about the possibility of additional provocations, including a seventh nuclear test. It also raised the issue of a military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, including the transfer of ballistic missiles and other weapons. Now, this is the second time the three countries have issued a joint condemnation of North Korea at the IAEA. U.S. President Joe Biden in a recent interview said that the nuclear situation in North Korea is equally as threatening as before, and that nuclear weapons, as long as they are available, will always be problematic. Our Lee Si-hu has the details.
U.S. President Joe Biden, in an interview with Time magazine last week, said that North Korea's nuclear program is equally as threatening as it was before. When asked whether the situation was getting worse, he added he does not think it's more threatening. The president said that, quote, as long as there are nuclear weapons available, it's always going to be a problem, adding that former U.S. President Donald Trump was wrong in not wanting to work early on 5 years ago. When asked if it's American policy to live with a nuclear or near-nuclear Iran and North Korea, Biden confirmed that it isn't. President Biden further mentioned his visit to South Korea, quote, to reclaim the chips industry, and said the U.S. has secured $865 billion in private sector investments during his presidency. The interview took place at the White House on May 28th, where Biden spoke extensively about his foreign policy agenda. Its full transcript was released on Tuesday. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
And amid mounting political pressure, U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday announced he will not grant asylum to those entering the U.S. illegally through its southern border. The decision comes weeks before his first television debate with Donald Trump. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Considered one of the biggest obstacles to his re-election bid, U.S. President Joe Biden is taking steps to curb the large influx of illegal immigrants crossing into the United States. Biden on Tuesday signed an executive order to temporarily shut down asylum requests when the 7-day average of daily border crossings hit 2,500 across official ports of entry. The border would reopen only after the figure drops to 1,500 for 7 days in a row and stays that way for 2 weeks.
Today I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process.
Biden explained that asylum through legal procedures is still possible, adding that the tighter border controls will help the U.S. restore order. The executive order will also have some exemptions, including for unaccompanied children. The Biden administration has faced mounting pressure from the public as the president's lax immigration policy led to illegal crossings at the southern border to spiral out of control. More than 10,000 illegal border crossings were being reported daily at the end of last year. The executive order also comes on the heels of the first television debate between Biden and his rival in the November White House race, Donald Trump, later this month. Trump is expected to criticize Biden's immigration policy over the past 4 years. The former president, on the other hand, has long pledged tighter border controls and immigration policies, going back to his successful election bid in 2016. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi claimed a third consecutive term in office on Tuesday evening after a 6-week-long election. His Bharatiya Janata Party, however, fell short of a 272-seat majority in the 543-seat Lok Sabha, signifying a blow to his party's grip on power. The BJP won 240 seats, which is 63 seats fewer than in 2019. It still secured a majority through its allies in the National Democratic Alliance, which won a total of 293 seats. The opposition India Alliance, led by the Indian National Congress Party, won 234 seats, a big surprise compared to 2019's 80 seats. Modi has been campaigning in full confidence of winning a 2/3 majority with a target of 400 seats. Despite the underwhelming performance, he celebrated at the BJP headquarters in New Delhi, saying that this is a victory for the world's largest democracy. In South Africa, at least 11 people died in the country's KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape provinces on Monday after a storm ripped through the region. Torrential rains caused flooding, while a tornado caused extensive damage to the town of Tongaat near Durban. The Premier of KwaZulu-Natal said that the death toll could rise. American multinational pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson was ordered by an Oregon court on Monday to pay $260 million in damages to a woman who said she developed a deadly cancer linked to asbestos exposure from the company's talcum powder. The plaintiff, 49-year-old Kyung Lee, was diagnosed with mesothelioma last year, which she claims is a result of inhaling asbestos-tainted talc for over 30 years. While Johnson & Johnson affirmed that its talc products do not contain asbestos or cause cancer, citing scientific studies, the company is facing over 61,000 talc-related lawsuits, while it continues to pursue a proposed $6.48 billion deal to settle some of the claims. According to a new report released by the Southern Poverty Law Center on Tuesday, the U.S. in 2023 had the largest number of hate groups in the past 50 years. The latest edition of the report said there were 835 active anti-government groups last year, up from 122 compared to 2 years ago. It said there are 595 active hate groups. A senior SPLC analyst also said a record-high 166 white nationalist groups were recorded in 2023. The center's CEO, Margaret Huang, voiced concerns about November's presidential election, saying that some groups are already implementing plans to undo democracy. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.